You know that feeling when your phone lights up, and for a second, your heart jumps. But it's just another notification, not the one you're waiting for. You check again, scroll through the same messages, stare at the last words they sent. The conversation that used to flow so easily now ends in a silence that hums louder than any sound. You type, erase, type again, then erase once more. The glow of the screen becomes the only light in your room, painting your face in cold blue as the hours slip away. The clock ticks louder with every passing minute, a reminder that you're still here, still waiting, still hoping for something that never arrives. You tell yourself maybe they're busy, maybe they didn't see it, maybe it's nothing. But deep down, you know when silence isn't accidental, you can feel when it's deliberate. The warmth that used to greet you turns distant. Their words grow shorter. The laughter fades. And then, without warning, there's nothing. No message, no call, just absence, stretched across hours, then days. The silence begins to fill with your own thoughts, looping endlessly. You replay old conversations, searching for clues. You remember their smile, the softness in their voice, the way they once made you feel safe. And now that memory burns. Because how can someone who once knew your every fear now pretend not to see your name on their screen? Silence is often mistaken for peace, but when it's weaponized, it becomes a slow kind of cruelty. It says everything without saying a word, that you're no longer worth the effort, that your voice doesn't deserve an answer. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of uncertainty, the ache of invisibility. In that quiet, you start to turn against yourself. You question every word you said, every moment you shared. You apologize in your head for things you didn't do. You wonder if maybe you expected too much, felt too deeply, cared too loudly. The silence becomes a mirror that warps your reflection. You start to see yourself through their indifference. And yet, even then, you crave their response. A single message, even a harsh one, would be better than this void. Because words mean you still exist in their world. But silence means you don't. It's strange how nothing can feel so heavy. How the absence of a sound can echo louder than a scream. How the space between two people can grow vast without a single step being taken. You lie there, staring at your phone, feeling the air thicken around you. The glow fades as the screen goes dark, leaving you alone with the pulse of your own heartbeat. And in that hollow stillness, you finally understand something most people never admit. That sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't anger or words. It's nothing at all. Silence isn't just the lack of words. It's a psychological weapon, precise and invisible. When someone who once gave you warmth suddenly withdraws it, your mind doesn't register indifference. It registers danger. The brain interprets emotional disconnection much like physical injury. The same neural circuits that respond to pain light up when we're ignored. It's why your chest tightens, why your stomach sinks, why your thoughts begin to spiral. You're not overreacting. You're wired to need response, to seek belonging, to survive through connection. And when that bond is cut without explanation, your body panics, trying to make sense of what can't be seen or heard. At first, you try to stay calm. You tell yourself they'll come back, but silence has a way of growing teeth. It starts small, a glance that looks through you instead of at you, a conversation that ends before it begins, laughter that stops just short of including you. Then the warmth that once anchored you turns sharp, distant. The space between you becomes an invisible punishment, and the longer it lasts, the more you start to blame yourself. This is what makes the silent treatment so powerful. It doesn't require shouting or confrontation. It controls through uncertainty. You're left suspended, not knowing whether you're being punished or forgotten. That confusion breeds anxiety, and anxiety makes you desperate to restore balance. You start apologizing for things you don't understand, bending your emotions into shapes that might earn you back their attention. You chase their approval, even when you did nothing wrong, because silence convinces you that maybe you did. There's a cruel psychology at play here, intermittent reinforcement. They withdraw affection until you break, and when you finally do, they give it back in small, intoxicating doses. One kind word after days of distance feels like sunlight after winter. It resets your hope, reteaches your heart to crave their validation, even though it's the same hand that hurt you. Over time, you stop seeking peace and start seeking permission to exist again in their world. This cycle isn't random. It's about power. Emotional withdrawal establishes control without appearing aggressive. It places one person as the decider, the one who speaks or doesn't. And you, on the other side, become smaller each time you wait. Your self-worth begins to hinge on their response. You measure your value through their silence. It's subtle, almost elegant in its cruelty. Silence becomes their language of dominance, and you, the one left waiting, become fluent in apology. Because in the end, it isn't the absence of sound that hurts, but the message hidden inside it. You don't matter enough to be answered. There comes a point when the silence stops being about them and starts being about you. At first, it feels like punishment, an echo of rejection stretched across every unanswered hour. But then, somewhere in that emptiness, another kind of awareness begins to form. The realization that silence, as cruel as it feels, is also a mirror reflecting your own hunger to be seen. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote that we exist through the gaze of others, that to be seen is to be confirmed as real. When that gaze turns away, when recognition is withdrawn, we face the terrifying possibility that we might disappear into the void. The silent treatment cuts straight into that wound. It isn't just that they stopped talking. It's that their absence calls your existence into question. You begin to ask yourself, if they no longer acknowledge me, do I still matter? The quiet becomes a vast and indifferent space, a Sartrean nothingness, where meaning dissolves, and you're left to rebuild it from fragments of thought and breath. But philosophy offers another path through this darkness. Epictetus, the Stoic, taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from the meaning we attach to them. Silence, he would say, is neither cruelty nor comfort. It simply is. The pain blooms only when we decide that silence must mean rejection, that absence must mean unworthiness. To the Stoic mind, peace is found not by changing the silence, but by changing our response to it. If we can let the quiet exist without letting it define us, we take back the power that was once used to control us. Kierkegaard saw solitude as a confrontation, the place where despair and selfhood collide. He believed that only by standing alone before the infinite can we discover what truly anchors us. Silence, in this sense, becomes a test of being. When their voice fades, when the room grows still, when light falls across an untouched chair, that's when you meet yourself without decoration, without applause, without the soft assurance of belonging. You hear your own breathing, the subtle rhythm of life continuing in spite of absence. And in that quiet, something sacred begins to stir. Not loneliness, but awareness. The echoes that once haunted you begin to fade into vastness. You start to see that the silence never belonged to them. It was always the space within you, waiting to be noticed. Every unanswered message, every empty hour becomes an invitation, not to chase, but to listen, to the pulse in your chest, to the thoughts you once drowned in noise, to the small voice that asks gently, who might you become if you stopped waiting to be chosen? Because maybe their silence is not a wall, but a mirror, and in it you finally see who you are without their validation. Healing begins quietly, not with their apology, not with closure, but with the moment you stop chasing sound from those who use silence as punishment. Something shifts deep inside, subtle, like dawn breaking without anyone noticing. You realize no message is coming, and for the first time, that truth doesn't hurt. It feels like release. Peace isn't found in their response. It's found in your ability to stay centered within the quiet, to let the absence be what it is. Not a verdict on your worth, but an opening for your calm to return. You stop refreshing screens, stop decoding what wasn't said. And beneath the noise of longing, you hear something softer, your own heartbeat. Proof that you are still here, still alive, still capable of feeling deeply, even when no one answers back. At first, the quiet feels foreign. It carries the ghost of waiting. But with time, it changes shape. It stops echoing with questions and begins to hum with presence. You see that silence isn't the absence of connection. It's the space where you build a new one, with yourself. There's a strange grace in learning to sit with silence, to let the ticking clock, the still air, the untouched phone become companions instead of reminders. You breathe, and each breath becomes its own kind of message. You begin to understand what all the noise had been hiding, that your worth was never dependent on being heard by them. The quiet becomes a teacher, whispering lessons no apology could contain. Absence isn't rejection, it's redirection. The universe gently turning you towards something truer, something that doesn't vanish when attention fades. You find that the same space that once felt like exile is now a sanctuary. You no longer wait for them to speak. You begin to listen inward. And somewhere in that listening, peace returns, not as a reward, but as the natural stillness of no longer fighting the silence. Then comes the moment, sudden, luminous, when you realize you've crossed the threshold. The silence that once controlled you now frees you. You no longer measure time by how long it's been since they reached out. You no longer seek validation in echoes. You wake, and the absence doesn't ache anymore. It simply exists, and so do you, whole, steady, unbroken. You are no longer haunted by the sound of nothing. You are finally at peace with your own voice. subscribe to Beyond Persona Lab, where we explore the hidden psychology of love, power, and the human soul.